Involuntary commitment. I had a very long conversation about this in preparation for the show with my executive producer, because my first inclination towards the idea of involuntary commitment is absolutely not. My first inclination, my first emotional reaction is I feel very libertarian about it. I feel very much like, why would I trust government officials who have weaponized the power of the federal government and the state government and the local government against you and I based on our conservative political beliefs or our Christian religious beliefs? Why would I trust those people not to abuse their power if we allow the government to involuntarily commit people based on the government's assessment of our mental health status? I thought, how is this different from red flag laws? This is my initial reaction. And so let me take you through what I have spent half the day working on, because when I started digging into the data and the studies and the legalities of involuntary commitment, what I found somewhat changed my mind. And the biggest difference, by the way, in answer to my original question, how is involuntary commitment, or how could it be different than red flag laws that we don't support because they violate due process? That right there is the difference. Due process of law. Because red flag laws trample on due process. They deprive you of due process based on an allegation from a family member or a friend or a coworker or, a political enemy. And involuntary commitment, if it is done correctly and legally, it does not deprive you of due process. You are not involuntarily committed without multiple layers of the court adjudicating your case. So that's sort of the short answer to that. There's also a big distinction between unelected bureaucrats in the executive branch of the government, the swamp, the administrative state, and the court system. So to put this concretely, there's a big difference between a Biden administration ATF bureaucrat deciding whether you can own a gun or not based on your social media posts on Facebook about Donald Trump or about, the last time you went to the shooting range. There's a difference between that and between a family court judge determining the need for inpatient psychiatric treatment of individuals who have demonstrated serious mental illness and perhaps a propensity to hurt themselves or others. Now, you might say in response to that, well, sure, but we've seen even judges in our court system abuse their power. And the case that came to my mind earlier was in Cincinnati, Ohio, my hometown. There was a judge that removed custody of a 17-year-old girl from her parents because the girl wanted to be trans, and the parents said, no, not until you're 18, not while you're under our roof. And the judge removed custody of that girl from the parents and gave custody to someone who would facilitate the transing of this girl. And so maybe your reaction was the same as mine. Maybe you thought, okay, the court system, but how do we prevent corrupt judges from applying their arbitrary opinions on these matters on people? And the answer to that is there's no foolproof way. No system of government is perfect. Even our government, even our free market economy, for example, capitalism isn't perfect. It's just the least bad of all the economic systems. And that's true here too. There is no way in the world to prevent 100% of the time, prevent people from sinning, from acting with bad intentions, from harming their fellow man. There's no way to eradicate that from humanity. If there was, then we are thousands of years too late on implementing whatever that might be that could thoroughly obliterate sin here on earth. But there's no way to do that. So what we do instead is we set up a system of government that is the least likely to allow for human sin to manifest. And then we set up layers of accountability or layers of recourse so that when inevitably somebody in our government does abuse their power, does sin, their human nature, or the bad part of their human nature manifests from their position of power, that the person who is harmed is able to have some recourse. And so there is no way foolproof. There's no foolproof way to prevent a particular judge from abusing their power. But there is a way to set up an appeals process so that if someone was harmed unfairly and unjustly, that they have the recourse. And it is the least bad of all the ways.